Hello there, welcome back to our show. Today I'm going to talk about the Shawscope Volume One from Arrow. As you can see here, and I do get a lovely booklet. I'm sure you've seen videos covering this already. You get these booklets, it's lovely. As well as that, you get I'm just trying to make sure I don't break anything while I'm showing this off. You also get this, which has discs, which is all these lovely discs, and the covers. You get all the extras. So, as well as that, you also get the CD soundtracks as well. So, it's a wonderful box set. I had a lot of fun with it. It has been out since December, so I'm doing this in March. It shows you I've been taking my time watching them. I've also, because I'd watched some of the Avengers box set as well, which came out just before, from Eureka, that's a lot of martial arts to watch. And some of the plots are similar. So, I've been taking my time, I've been enjoying it, I've not tried to rush it. And I know there's going to be a cinematic box set, Shawscope box set part 2 coming soon, or volume 2. So I'm looking forward to that. Now this box set is made up of films mainly by two directors, which is I'm going to have to reference this. So you have Shang-Chi and Lau Ke-Leung are the two main directors in this one, but you do get films from Jung Shang-ho, who directed the first one, King Boxer, and Hu Meng-ho, who directed Mighty Peking Man. But those are the outliers, really, and, you know, they're not the ones that are the kind of main part of the box. Also, Shang-Chi, some of his films he directed, because he was also basically a big producer, some of the films he's a director credit on had a lot of work done by other directors. So he was like a certain point in his career, he started out as a director, but at a certain point he became a brand. So certain people co-directed his films, which led to some disputes about authorship and, you know, lots of confusion. And we also have a case of Lau Ke-Leung was his stunt coordinator for a lot of these films, up to a certain point before this director also moved on from stunt coordinator to director and basically overtook his former employer. So there's a bit of tension between those two as well. So that's kind of complicated. So the director of some of these other films was also the stunt coordinator on some of the early films. So that makes it complicated. So Lau Ke-Leung is pretty much the auteur of this box set, is the easy way to put it. So I'm going to start off the outliers, the directors who are not these two. It's probably easier. So King Boxer is also known as Five Fingers of Death. You'll recognise the theme song because Tarantino used it in Kill Bill. Whenever the character gets mad, he's this weird revenge theme that Tarantino took for Kill Bill. Now everyone thinks it's from Kill Bill, but it's not. It's from Five Fingers of Death or King Boxer. I like King Boxer more than I like Kill Bill, to be honest. But it is a very traditional film. It is the epitome of a typical plot. I mean, there's nothing unique in the plot of this film. It's just how it's done. It's so good. It was a film that kind of broke through in the Kung Fu. It was a big hit that showed the Shaw Brothers a way to go, which was going from swordplay to martial arts. It was done as Bruce Lee was just starting to change the way Hong Kong films were produced, with his films leading all the way up to Enter the Dragon. But he was doing other stuff like Fist of Fury and stuff before. And Bruce Lee had been turned down by the Shaw Brothers and went to Golden Harvest, who was their rivals. So they had to try and compete in some way. And this was the first film that showed them the way to compete with Golden Harvest. Now, King Boxer is basically about a guy who has to go from being trained by one master to be trained by these expert masters to become the best fighter ever. There's a traitor in the midst in the camp of the people he's getting trained by. They don't trust him, they think he's lazy. He has to go through all these tests to prove his worth. He has to do a lot of fighting. He has a weird mad side, I suppose you can say, where you get the theme song. But all of this is just basic stuff. I mean, he runs into people he makes friends with, but basically it's a case of watch him suffer for a while, watch his friends suffer, and then watch him take all his enemies down one by one, and he takes down both individual enemies and the house that basically helped him, who basically brought the traitor in, who basically was all out to destroy this other house. So these two martial arts entities try to fight each other. Very basic plot, but it's just how it's done. It's wonderful. It's a terrific, fun film. You'll know where it's going in every second, but that doesn't matter because it's so enjoyably done. The other kind of outlier is the Mighty Peking Man, which I've already covered in another video. It's a mad, crazy King Kong rip-off. So the showbill trying to catch you. It's insane. It's wonderfully insane. I recommend it highly to go watch it. It is absolutely nuts. There's no sanity involved in this film. There's nothing that you could possibly call sane in this film. And that's why it's so good. Just go see it. It's just wonderful. It's not. The funny thing is, it's not the craziest film in this box set. There's another one that's even crazier, even better. So, there's that. Okay, now we go to the directors who made a lot of films in this box set. So I'll go with the one who was the main director, Chang-Chi. And I've got to say, even though there was disputes over authorship of some of these films, there's also a dispute over how they changed once he lost his main fight collaborator. I had a blast in all these films. These are all well-made films. These are all very entertaining. You can see maybe the fight became a bit more generic as it went on. Maybe the heights weren't as high, but it was still so good. And the films were still wonderfully insane and wonderfully done and very imaginative. So even though maybe he wasn't at his peak in the later films, one of his later films is one of my favourite films in the box set. So it's like there's that. I would say that his first and last film in the box set are the two strongest. So he starts off with Boxer From Shantung, which is basically Scarface done as a kung fu movie. It's basically the rise of a guy who's great at kung fu. He enters a city. So it's sort of like Brian De Palma's versus Scarface, but then 10 years before, and it's just the rise of a hoodlum who starts slow, gets bigger and bigger, and then eventually finds his enemies coming against him. And it ends in an audio round that lasts half an hour. Basically, it's Scarface, but with Kung Fu. Kung Fu places guns in this film. It's so much fun. It's just great. The first half is his rise. Basically, in the first half, he's trying not to get caught up in the gang life and stuff. He's trying to be honourable. That fails entirely. Because essentially, he wants to take over stuff, but he knows basically at some point he's going to have to become if he wants to become powerful, he has to become a gang. So he's just trying to keep some of his morality and decency to him. There's another gang that's out to get the person he looks up. There's two gangster gangs. He looks up to one of the gangsters who comes from a small town just like him. There's another gang who's a bit more sneaky, but they're much easier to beat up. But they are sneakier and they are more conniving, which is the danger of them. And basically it's a case of he learns through basically being taught by one guy how to become a gangster there. You see his rise, you see him beat people up in wonderful set pieces. And then the final half hour, after his mentor's been killed, is basically him versus all the other gang. And basically it's one location, him versus hundreds, then his men come in and even it up. But it's still a bloodbath. I mean, this sequence is so bloody, so brutal. I mean, he spends most of the fight with a little minor axe in his stomach. I mean, the gangs that these against all have these little axes throughout. They're violent, they're vicious, they're brutal. Even though some of them are cowards, they're still really brutal. The film is just wonderful. The film is just insane the whole way through. It's not a film to watch for the dialogue scenes or anything, but the characters are interesting enough for what you need them to be. But it's the actual story and the absolute excess this film has that it's just a delight. It's just a delight. I can't wait to rewatch this one. And then we go to his next one, which I would say is the weakest of the bunch. Is the Five Shaolin Masters, and it's not weak because of the kung fu. The kung fu is great. The kung fu is really good. This is before he had a split, which the director will come to later. But this was like it has numerous action scenes, all of which are really well done. The problem is the plot, because there's like five masters, and you basically have to split up after the Shaolin Temple is destroyed. They have to split up and basically reform at a certain location, and to bring together all the different rebel gangs to basically try to organise a threat against their enemy. And their enemy has all these masters who were destroyed Shaolin temples, have to take these guys down before they can really get anywhere. And it's basically them having to learn to go beyond their training and actually get better, and also having to avoid being killed by these other masters. And it's very repetitive because you have five different characters going through the same story. And that's the basic problem with the film is you have five characters who are basically the same characters. They've similarities or differences. The differences are always just what kind of method you use for the kung fu, but as characters they feel very samey. Apart from the incompetent one who's learning on the job. But that's kind of the problem. The problem's in the actual plot and how it's actually constructed. Because you're not really that interested in the story, because until the halfway point when they actually start to join up again and the plot thickens and it gets more interesting and after they realise they're not good enough to learn more, that's when it becomes a proper kung fu movie. Until then it becomes a series of sequences or kung fu sequences, all of which are good, but they feel very repetitive because there's no story progression. So that's the kind of problem with this film, is you have to get through the first half of good kung fu scenes that are basically all the same. So there's that problem. But there's another one came out, it's almost a prequel, it came out 2 years later, called Shaolin Temple. And it's just wonderful. It's the opposite, where the kung fu scenes are enjoyable, they're good scenes. They're not amazing. I mean, the finale of the previous film, Five Kung Fu Masters, is so much better than anything you get in this film. Just for kung fu. This is a better film because the character stuff's there. You like the characters. It's basically a prequel where you're seeing all these guys going to the Shaolin Temple and trading, and there's a traitor in the temple, and essentially it's about the lead up. You know this thing's hanging over them as they're learning to become like kung fu masters, and they're getting taught and they're getting treated badly to learn what they need to learn. But it's all great because it's all basically learning from your master and learning what you need to learn to be better, to improve yourself and your skills. It's a very simple story, but it works. It works really well. This one actually has a problem when the fight starts at the end. The big fight scene is cutting a lot of scenes, and there's not enough build really there because there's so much character stuff done before. The final action scene is the least interesting part of the film. All the character stuff before is much more fun. This is a better film than the Five Shaolin Masters, but it's just one of those ones that if you're just looking for kung fu, you'll probably like Five Shaolin Masters more. But if you're looking for something that's a bit more character based, you'll probably like this one better, really. So now we go to Chinatown Kid, which is a fun movie. It's not the best one, it's not the worst one. It is basically the Boxer From Shantung redone. This time it's set in modern day. A kid who's looking after his grandpa gets in trouble in Hong Kong. He has to move to America, Chinatown, because the police are after him because he was set up by this gangster. When he goes to America, he tries to basically be a good citizen. Nothing works out for him. He ends up getting caught up in a gang where he can get revenge on the guys who set him up early on. He does that and he ends up becoming this big gangster. And because his friendship with this other immigrant who's also tried to do the right thing and actually learn the right way, he gets a good example to try and turn his life back, but it's too late. So it is a tragedy. But you've Alexander Fusheng as the lead character, and he's been in quite a lot of these films, and he's got a lot of charisma. He died tragically young in the early 80s, but in this one he's the lead and he's great in this film. This film's fun, even though you know where it's going at every possible point. Doesn't matter, it's still very enjoyable. It's a bit long, but it doesn't matter. It's still a fun movie. All the action scenes are enjoyable, the character stuff's enjoyable and a bit broad, but everything works. You know, you don't really need to reinvent the wheel with this film. It just works. It's a melodrama. That's all it is. It works. Just go and enjoy it. That's all you need to know. Just go and enjoy this one. Then we finally have the Five Venoms and the Crippled Avengers as the last two from this director, Shang-Chi. Five Venoms is one of the weaker ones of this director, but it's pretty good still. I mean, basically, it's these five masters of this venom technique have all hidden. They've been outlawed and they're hiding within society. A sixth member of this cast has been told by the design master he has to go and find who has the money that was stolen years ago and return it. But also he has to watch out for the Five Venoms because some of them have gone bad and want the money themselves, and some of them are actually haven't turned away from their training. So he has to both find out where the money is, but also find out who's turned bad and who isn't. And it's a good, enjoyable film. I mean, it really is enjoyable. You can tell who the villains are and who the heroes are pretty quick. But they try to have quite good reversals. Early on, there's two guys, and one of them thinks a hero, one thinks a villain, it turns it the other way around. But you know who's who pretty quick. So there's not really that much suspense. It's just trying to see who goes in what order. The plotting's not amazing, but all the set pieces are just wonderful. They're just great fun. And they're not at the same height as some of from the Boxer From Shantung, but they're still really good. They're still really enjoyable. You can get behind the characters. You can enjoy what they're doing. You can enjoy waiting to see how everyone falls out because there's a lot of developments. And also this younger guy who's not as good as any Five Venoms, he has to help the Venoms who are still good to succeed. So it's a well put together melodrama. It's just not as good as some of the other films in this box set. Even though it was a more famous title. It's nowhere near as good as the next one, Crippled Avengers, which is manages to be more insane than Mighty Peking Man and better in every way. And this is one of my favourite from this box set. This is just perfection. It's the fact that it's insane makes it even better. Basically, it starts off in the first minute. This kung fu master has his home attack while he's away. His wife is cut in half in front of you, and his son gets his arms cut off. Then he comes back, gets revenge on the guys, and then we cut up, and he puts these iron things on his son and teaches him kung fu. Then we cut to the future, and it turns out these two guys have gone really bad. They're the villains, and they just hate everybody, and they're just nasty. And then during a couple of days, they manage to injure 4 different people. One of whom talks back to them, who they make deaf and he can't speak. They blind someone, they take off someone's legs, and they turn a guy who's really smart into an idiot. These guys form together, try and survive together. They end up going to this temple who teaches them kung fu, because there was a master, the guy who was turned into an idiot. And this guy who's an idiot actually still has a kung fu knowledge instinctively, even though he's gone in his head. His master teaches them all how to actually use their defects to their advantage. And after a year or two of training, they go back to face the guy who did the dirt on them. And basically, at this point, it's just getting revenge through lots and lots of cool set pieces that are wonderfully absurd. So you've Blind Man beating up tons of guys. You've got a guy who can't hear and speak beating up tons of people. Some of them are actually making themselves the targets just to draw the villains out. The villains have their own henchmen, all of whom have great gifts that have to be defeated. And it's how to trick these guys into not seeing what they've actually got planned for revenge. It's just wonderful. This is just so enjoyable. I'm not saying more about it, just go watch it. It's so good, it's so much fun, it's so insane. It's just one of the greatest film experiences I've had all year. Okay, now we go to the films of Lau Kar-leung, who is he's a more challenging director than Chang-Chi really because he's not just trying to do basic stories. I mean, I think you can tell from how I've described these other films is they're a lot of fun, but they're basic stories. There's no complication to them. In these other films, it's the situation tends to be more complicated. I mean, the first one's Challenge of the Masters. That's the most basic of these films, really. Is you've a kid whose father does not teach him, and he has to find a new master who'll teach him how to, learn kung fu. And it's a brutal regime of training, and and basically they also have to use this to actually hunt down these other criminals, and also deal with rivalry between different houses, which has a great sequence at the end where they have to do this ceremony where they have to fight and get these things in the air and get as many as you can and defeat the villains. But at this point, the hero has gone from a callow youth to realising if you alienate your villains, they're just going to come back at you more violently. So he finds ways to actually develop peaceful negotiations with people he might not like. So it's more complicated films. These are harder to talk about, these films, because they actually are more complicated. They do have more nuance and they are worthwhile. They do feel longer than Shang-Chi films though, because they're not going through the typical narrative. They actually are trying to do something different with the kung fu narrative. They do have women characters. Shang-Chi was a big macho kind of director who loved bonding between men. Those themes. And apparently he was not very happy when you asked him if there was any gay subtext. Apparently that was not a good thing. But, his stunt coordinator turned director, Lau Kar-leung, was much more into having women characters and actually making the heroes have to face up to the flaws and face up to the fact that they might not be as great as they think they are. And that's really interesting. So his first one, Challenge of the Masters, is really enjoyable, but it is a basic early film. Then he goes into the Executions from Shaolin, which is very much the same way as Five Shaolin Masters, in a sense. It's the people who have escaped from Shaolin Temple and burnt down have to split up and start a resistance. But this is a tale where they have to they are getting hunted down brutally, and it takes place over about 20 years as the leader of the resistance against the villains who killed them has to learn a lot and has to actually have a family and learn from his family and teach his family. And it's more complicated because he falls for this other woman they meet on the run who's also a master of a different style from him. And so there's a seduction between both of them that's about their different styles. At a certain point they realise they cannot defeat this master who destroyed the temple as they are. They have to train more. So as they train, he marries this woman and they have a son. He goes to try and fight the master. The master defeats him. He manages to escape. Second time he goes to fight the master, he dies. Your lead character dies in this film. That's really wonderful. And his son has to take his place. Has to learn both his mother's style and his father's style. And becomes someone who can actually defeat the Master. Even though it's gone on so long, the actual original fight has long since passed. So it's a wonderfully different take on a kung fu movie. Because it's about men and women, it's about parenthood. And bad parenthood, because this guy who's obsessed is not the best parent. He will not teach his son his style because the mother taught the son her style. He's not really someone who learns to collaborate. So it's about problems, people's pride getting in the way, and how, people can be people and people can be annoying and things move on. It's a really terrific film, but it is the most frustrating film of this box set in a sense that the lead character's kind of a dick. You want to slap him a lot, which makes it interesting and memorable. It's just like it's what people are like in real life, but doesn't make it easier to watch because the lead character does push your buttons into hating him. So there's that, right? So then we have two of my favourites from the box set. We have Heroes of the East. It's another marriage story. This time it's a Japanese woman who, for business arrangements, she marries the son of this guy from China, Hong Kong, and they're trying to... They have two different philosophies of Kung Fu, they have two different philosophies of life, and they have to learn to live together, and they're both stubborn as hell. They're both young people who are sure their way is right, and they both push each other's buttons way too much, and neither of them are particularly likeable. But again, because it's much more like life, that's what makes it more interesting. Like, they behave as bratishly as PC people in a young couple in a marriage behave, So it's fun to watch, but they both need slapped. But their dispute and their breakup and all the rest of it leads to him insulting her Japanese heritage, and then he has to, which leads to basically a challenge. These Japanese masters are all going to come over and challenge us again. He has to, for his honour, he has to defeat them. But he also has to learn how to respect. If he wants his wife back, to respect them. So it's about him actually learning. Not only does he have to defeat them, he has to learn from the other styles. He has to defend the honour of his people who he's put in danger because of his ego, but also cannot alienate the other side. So it's about cooperation and actually learning to respect other people who have different philosophies than you. So it's a terrific film. It's really good. And it is fun watching these two characters screw up so badly in the first half of the movie. Because they're both completely wrong. It's not one or the other. They're both absolutely in the wrong. I mean, your view of who's more in the wrong will probably vary, but they're both got it coming. And then we have the wonderfully named Dirty Hole, which is about basically this prince who's hiding in the lower districts, and he actually deals with this con man who he actually makes to be his pupil, student, to help him defend himself, because his brothers are quietly trying to kill him because he's actually the son of the emperor. And they think he's a favourite, so he'll probably get the title. So this is his way to avoid the dealing with the court, but also avoid getting killed. Is to hide out for a while until his father actually dies. And it's basically, that's the background. It's basically the relationship between these two characters, and how one learns from the other, and how they both basically enjoy knowing each other. And it's just basically a buddy movie where one guy's way smarter than the other. It's just so enjoyable. I mean, there's the espionage thing that keeps the plot going, allows for some fight scenes, but that's not the main driving force. The main driving force is having fun stuff. Because the Emperor's son character does never want to give away his hand. He's very subtle in how he does things. It's like there's fights where he is acting as if there's not a fight going on, even though there's a fight going on. They're having tea and things, and it's wonderfully done. The whole film has a wonderful, light-hearted feel to the danger. It's one of the highlights of the box set. It's just so good. But this whole box, hopefully this video showed you this box set is really worth having. There's so much good stuff here. I mean, the Chang-Chi stuff is more obviously wonderful and macho, but the You know, the Liu Kang, I'm just checking the name again, Look Her Lung stuff, I think it's probably more my taste. It's just more enjoyably weird and strange characters and people learning stuff that they learn lessons that are more complicated than obvious. And they tend to end in more ambiguous notes than the other ones. So, very enjoyable, highly recommended. You go and watch these. If you like martial arts at all, this is a must. So, hope you enjoyed this long video. And I'll be back soon with another one. Right, bye for now.